Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Sunday afternoon. It is December 24th, 2023, Christmas Eve. It is so good to see all of you here with me today on this Christmas Eve as well. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms, so go ahead and subscribe there. Also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me there on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays if you have not already. You guys can also subscribe to my Substack at jaybefaunt.substack.com so you are aware of all email notifications whenever I go live, upload clips, or write articles, so you can go ahead there. If you already like what I put out and you guys want to continue to support the channel, you guys can push me out into the algorithm by also liking the stream today. Because this is a special topic, I will be giving my salutations and hellos to everybody in the chat after I say what I need to say. But for the interim, I will not be giving my hellos in the beginning as usual. But it is good to see all of you watching here today. I think this is I think this is also very important to talk about, because if not, then, you know, what else? So I'm going to be getting into this right now, just so that everybody knows what are we talking about. As you guys may have saw from the thumbnail, I will be talking about this, addressing comments. This isn't my first time addressing Jimmy Dore. I have just addressed him earlier this year regarding what he and Dr. Cornel West have spoken about. But now I feel that I have to do it again, especially given the hats that I wear within this independent media space. The hats that I wear are as a Black man that is also disabled as well as gay. I do not like having to do these for the reason that I'd rather stick to a lot of what's going on in the news. But for the sole purpose of this subject and so many people being told inaccurate information, I have to say something as a Black person and as an LGBTQ person in this space. Here's the thing. When it comes to subjects like this is deeply important to me. And I am doing this out of a sense of duty, because ultimately this is about uniting the working class in order to achieve something better in this country. My hope for addressing Jimmy Dore on this is to be a teachable moment, not just to him, but also his audience that may be tuning in, who may have not ever tuned into my channel before. Welcome to you as well. As of less than 2 weeks ago, Jimmy Dore had on Tucker Carlson on his show. In their conversation, there were some things that were said regarding class and identity that were reprehensible in my view. I plan to go over these things and address them to educate my audience and on this show as to why we cannot separate the two like what liberals do. So I'm going to be sharing my screen just so that we can get into exactly what was said. I think this is going to be extremely important. Some people may regard this as just talking about identity, which this is not. Some people may regard this as just talking about class, which this is not. I'm going to show and share with receipts why identity and class are intertwined and they cannot be separated. Unfortunately, you have parties on either side that are willing to separate the two. Let's get into it. So, this is the part that got me outraged.
Exactly. And so to keep pretending like we're living 30 years ago is exactly what the establishment wants to do. And by the way, all this talk about trans issues and talk about white, this doesn't come from the grassroots up. This comes directly from BlackRock and Larry Fink. This comes from Vanguard. This is so the most murderous companies who are raping the planet can shroud themselves in an air of virtue. And how do they do it? They do it by trans issues and LGBTQ and white supremacy and inclusion and equity and all that stuff. And that's there to keep us divided because
So we're going to get into it, right? So I will be stopping or pausing in different intervals in order to respond. And I will also be sharing different facts and figures as well to back it up. Now, in order to truly get across the ideas and information that I need to, because I'm a Black man in this space, I have to take the emotion that I'm feeling and I have to put it to the side because I do not get the deference and I do not get the grace that someone who is white like Jimmy Dore has. So even though I want to be as loud, passionate, and boisterous like Jimmy is, I can't do that because then I will get tagged as the angry Black man. So if I seem a little overly calm, it is because I have to do that in this space. I do not have that privilege. So let's go. Let's start right from the beginning.
Conversation with Cornel West when he came on the show. And when he came on the show, I was a supporter of his. And when he left, I wasn't. And I tried to impress upon him that when he talks about white supremacy, the majority of people in America who are poor are white. And if you're going to try to lecture coal miners about white supremacy, it's going to fall flat. And if he's out there being a Black activist, he could talk about white supremacy. But if you're trying to run for president and actually oppose the establishment, the last thing you should do is try to lead with trans issues or LGBTQ or because you know what? If you get a living wage for everybody, that helps everybody, especially.
Now, here's the thing. He said coal miners. Some are Black. Some are LGBTQ. So you're saying that talking about things like white supremacy is going to fall on deaf ears. Okay. Let me address this really quick. I have notes, so to keep myself on track. So, not acknowledging the problem and facing it head on is what the establishment doesn't want. You see, a lot of times when it comes to talking about issues regarding white supremacy, especially within this space, or if, say, a presidential candidate is talking about it, it is important because it shows that, yes, it is a problem, and yes, it needs to be on the mind, on the forefront of white people's minds. Let me put this out here right now. If you're white, and if talking about white supremacy makes you feel bad, then that sounds like some internal work that you need to deal with. It is not a means to make you just feel bad in your heart, and that's it. Talking about white supremacy means acknowledging the problem so that the issue can be changed, so that the issues for marginalized people can improve. If I have an issue with you, Do you want me to just keep it inside and then just react in a passive aggressive way without actually confronting the issue? Or do you want me to actually name the issue, confront the issue, and then so we can work through it so that we can actually move forward together? I think that's what is ultimately the best course of action, is it not? Now, these corporations that use DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and LGBTQ issues, they use them as a cover to keep themselves in a positive light with certain groups. And what they do is they separate identity from class, but their focus is on the identity part, when in reality, it's actually connected. I don't think that we should dismiss this, because just because the liberal side focuses on identity and separates it from class doesn't mean the other side that focuses on class and separates it from identity is any better. I think we really need to start thinking of it as two sides of the same coin. They're not two separate coins. Let's continue.
Trans and LGBTQ, black and white. If you get health care for everybody, that helps everybody, meaning black and white. So if you start to, what the establishment wants people like Cornel West to do is to keep talking about white supremacy.
He mentioned healthcare. So we're going to talk about healthcare. All right. Okay. Let's say hypothetically you give everyone healthcare for all. Right. We give everybody healthcare for all, and that gets rid of the whole disparity, right? Wrong. Because there still will be disparities if we don't tackle the issue as far as identity is concerned. So let me share with you some statistics. Let me see. All right. So this is out of the CDC. It says maternal mortality rates in the United States, and this is from 2 years ago. It says in 2021, the maternal mortality rate for non-Hispanic Black, subsequently Black women, was 69.9 deaths per 100,000 live births, 2.6 times the rate for non-Hispanic white, subsequently white women, which is 26.6. Rates for the Black women were significantly higher than rates for white and Hispanic women. The increases from 2020 to 2021 for all race and Hispanic origin groups were significant. By that being said, even if you were to account to have everyone equal as far as their health care given, there's still racial disparities. They're still there. So then what? I can't tell you how many stories we've had about doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers treating Black people differently, even gauging our pain thresholds as higher, and this is including in medical textbooks, saying that, oh, we feel less pain. How many people who are Black in the healthcare system that have been their pain and their concerns have been waved away because of the color of our skin? Let me ask you this. How many people who are trans literally have to crowdfund for their gender affirming care? You don't think that's not a class issue? I think it is. In order for them to be able to be the true version of themselves. Let me do this as well. If you're ready, just put a thumbs up. You ready? Rome, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in as well. I appreciate you joining me.
Oh man, I ain't shit. I was just building this bullshit at the library, but I had time, man. I had time for this for sure.
Yeah. So right now I'm at the point where he talks about the disparity. Well, he talks about, how if everybody gets healthcare, then that's it. Everybody's good, right? When in reality, if you just gave everybody healthcare, you're not tackling the disparities that are also still existing within the healthcare system.
All right.
So that's a point that I think that needs to be addressed as well. Is that if you're going to say that everybody's good once everybody has the exact same thing,
why is it? Excuse me, I'm sorry, brother, but
No,
why is it we don't have healthcare? Why is it Americans don't have healthcare? It's because of black people. They do not want black people to live longer, and white people go against their own needs. When they seen that when they seen that black people was going to benefit from healthcare, they said no. So why is it we don't have healthcare now?
Yeah, there was actually someone who was actually talking about that very same subject, saying that the reason why we don't have universal healthcare is because they don't want the black people to have it.
So how would we get that healthcare? How, like, let's be real here. How can we get universal healthcare when we have all of these institutions over our head? We have big pharma in our Congress, all throughout our office, paid off down there everybody that runs. How are we going to get that? Let's be real here.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things is that a lot of times people will talk about, well, the reason why we don't have it is because, well, we just don't have the right people in office. Part of it is because of race. Part of it is because we aren't, because they want to keep us divided.
How can you not talk about, how can you talk, go ahead, just go ahead with your clip, man, because I'm about to get heated.
Okay, so let me share this really quick, because kind of ironic that this is here, but it is what it is. Let's listen because I've heard this before. Let's give this a listen really quick.
But we don't. Why did we diverge from everyone else? How did that happen?
Nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right and doesn't have any sort of national healthcare system to speak of is because of racism. It really began in the 1880s, 1890s when medicine became a thing. And there was this guy named Frederick Ludwig Hoffman who came over here from Germany. And he was a young man. He was 17, in fact, when he came over, and was a numbers genius. And he was the guy who figured out that there was a statistical association between working in a cotton mill and having lung problems, asbestos and mesothelioma, smoking and lung cancer, and diet and cancer. In fact, his book on the association between a high processed food diet and cancer is still in print. And he's been dead since 1946, but his book is still around. So he's really smart in these things. And so he married this Southern belle from Georgia who was from a racist plantation family. And so he ran the numbers on black people and found that black people were dying, dropping like flies, more likely to be sick, more likely to die of pretty much everything. And concluded, which was the general consensus at the time among a lot of white people in the South, this is again in the 1890s, that Black people were genetically inferior. And in 1896, he published a book called Race, Tendencies, and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing Black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. And by the 1920s, this was referred to as scientific racism. He was testifying about it before Congress. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national healthcare system, people said no because Black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national healthcare system, it was the same thing. We don't want Black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 1947, same thing. Don't want Black people to get it. Right up until 1965, Senator Stennis, the Dixiecrats in the South, was quoting Hoffman as saying this, we have to figure out a way to keep Black people from using Medicare. This is when they were passing Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% hole, a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill. And that would discourage poor Black people from showing up at the hospitals. I mean, it was the most shocking thing I discovered, Cenk, when I was doing the research on this book, is that nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right and doesn't have any sort of national healthcare system to speak of is because of racism.
So yeah.
Answered that. Let's go back to the video. Let's continue. So here's the thing. If you really want to address, right, the disparities in our healthcare system, then also the disparities in white supremacy would also need to be addressed as well in order for us to be able to actually get what we need so that a tide lifts all boats. But the thing is that if we're not willing to address the actual 500-pound gorilla in the room, then guess what? We're not actually going to get what we actually need in this country, because we have this albatross around our neck that keeps us down. Now, let me continue with the video.
Keep talking about trans issues, to keep talking about LGBTQ as if they're an oppressed minority like they were in the 90s when I started.
Now, the LGBTQ as an oppressed minority, does it still exist? Well,
oh my God, this nigga is, you can't be that stupid. You can't be that stupid. And to say that we act like a minority group that's still being oppressed like we were in the 90s, we are oppressed in way worse ways than we were in the fucking 90s. Look at the Patriot Act, the NDAA that keep the activists off the damn ground. All of our leaders are gone. What the fuck is you talking about? They act like they are oppressed minority group. We are. Why is it that how is America doing so good? Only white people say this shit. Only rich white people say this type of shit. Ain't no way you out of touch with reality that much that you don't see the shit that's going on in the ground. We all are commentators. We all are political commentators. We know the history. We know what goes on in the ground. People are being killed by the police every day for nothing. Being neglected from the healthcare system to the man. Play the video.
All right, so let me share this really quick with everybody, just so that we're clear. So this is out of Bloomberg. It says 2023 is already a record year for anti-LGBTQ bills in the U.S. Apparently, we're still doing all right. We're not being as discriminated against. Well, it says state lawmakers in the U.S. have already introduced more anti-LGBTQ bills this year than in the past 5 years combined. At least 385 anti-LGBTQ laws have been introduced at the state level in a majority of U.S. states as of March 3rd, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. By comparison, lawmakers introduced 162 anti-LGBTQ bills last year, 19 of which were signed into law. Between 2018 and 2022, state legislators introduced at least 361 anti-LGBTQ bills in total. So if you look at this graph, it actually shows in 2022 that they have been ramping up the anti-LGBTQ laws. Also, this is from Jillian Brandsetter, says these bills represent an effort to purge transgender people from the law and from public life. Says even if only 10% of those bills became law, it represents a massive rollback of freedoms for every person, that freedoms every person deserves. It says many of the bills target transgender people. Some are trying to block health care, while others limit access to bathrooms or abilities to join sports teams. By the way, just to let you guys know, let me read this really quick. It says more recently, drag performers have become under fire from lawmakers. I'm going to say something that you guys are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, shock and awe. But guess what? Number one, trans people are workers. Number two, drag queens are also workers. So here's the thing. If they are being discriminated against, that means workers are being discriminated. So my question is, and I got to make sure to keep myself calm, is that why in the world are we sitting here dividing the workers? Because we could be talking about them, but for some reason talking about them somehow is bad. Somehow we're somehow doing much better in this country.
I learned a long time, worker means white person. That's what that means. So what do Jimmy want our leaders to do? Want somebody that's running for president to do? Not address the issues that I face every day? And you think you're going to get that vote? You think you're going to get a nigga like me to vote for you if you're not addressing the things that me and my community is going through? So Jimmy, even if I had healthcare, right? Let's say all black people was healthy. We're doing good, right? We went vegan, vegetarian, we all working out. Guess what? You get shot in the head by the damn cops. So you got to address what's going on. We still are oppressed minority group. We have an illusion of these freedoms that has been given to us, but we still are the majority of the prison population. Jimmy, we are not only the majority of the prison population, but half of the people there are being held without trial, without bail, and most of them motherfuckers are black.
Rome, just to let you know, when you raise your voice, the sound kind of goes out a little bit. Just letting you know. So as far as the sound quality, just letting you know.
I'm sorry. Yeah, because we have to address these things. If you're going to run for any position, you better be ready. You better be ready to face these people. It's not just the white working class that has issues in America. We are still facing the same problems that my grandfather are facing. We are worse off. Most black people are still staying with their parents. The older millennials are staying with their parents. Do you understand that? Do you understand the wealth gap of normal white American families having $100,000 in their bank accounts compared to black people with $100 to $500?
Oh, I'll get into that in a second. I also have that as well. So let me share this as well. I just want to continue this. This is from the Williams Institute. This is from UCLA. It says evidence of employment-based discrimination on sexual orientation and gender identity. It says in October 15, 22 states in the District of Columbia expressly prohibit employment discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. Of those states, 19 in the District of Columbia also expressly prohibit discrimination based on the basis of gender identity. By analysis, how frequently existing state employment non-discrimination laws are used by LGBT people. So here's the data points. So it says workers, 6.5 million workers in the United States identify as LGBT. 51% of the LGBT workforce is not protected from sexual orientation or gender identity discrimination under state laws. And then this one says 4.9% of complaints of racial discrimination, employment filed every 10,000 workers of color, but 3.7 complaints of sexual discrimination in employment are filed for every 10,000 female workers each year. So the thing is that yes, it still happens regarding sexual orientation too, which is also based on class. Now, I also have some more statistics to share with you just to prove my point. Let's go into this. So this is also important. We're going to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's go to endhomelessness.org. It says racial inequalities and homelessness by the numbers. Most minorities in the United States experience homelessness at higher rates than whites, and therefore make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population. African Americans make up 13% of the general population, but more than 40% of the homeless population. Similarly, American Indians, Alaska Natives, Native Hawaiians, Pacific Islanders, and people who identify as two or more races make up a disproportionate share of the homeless population. So when it comes to race and class, when it comes to even homelessness, there is a disproportionality that also is not being addressed, that's being denied by people like Jimmy Dore and Tucker Carlson. And so when it comes to race and class, they are intertwined. I also have more receipts to share, because this is the thing. Saying that, oh, we've had it good for the last 30 years is gaslighting.
It's disrespectful.
Yes, it is. It's disrespectful to people like
this is what I want from you so-called white allies. I want you to shut the fuck up and stop speaking for us. We do enough of it. I'm pretty sure you guys hear us loud and clear. You hear us loud enough to ignore us. So if you're going to ignore what we're saying, don't even speak on what we go through as a community, because you have no idea, especially as a rich white man who will never, ever walk through the fucking hood. Never have to if you don't have to. Don't have to lift a damn finger to get what you want. You have no idea what it's like to be in a state of rage, to be in a state of panic, to be in a state of, is this my last day?
Yeah. Let's continue this. Let me share this as well. And then we're going to humanize this as well, because I would like to share this in order to humanize. Let me see. So this says papers. Police seize $17 million in 3 years. Blacks targeted the most. So it says over 3 years, law enforcement agencies seized $17 million from people in South Carolina. They thought they got the money through illegal means, according to an investigation by 2 newspapers. About 65% of the people targeted civil asset forfeiture in the state from 2014 to 2016 were black males in a state where African-American men make up just 13% of the population, according to Taken, a project by the Greenville News and Anderson Independent Mail. It says nearly 20% of the more than 4,000 people who had money or items seized over 3 years were never charged for the crime, and another 1 in 5 were found not guilty or had charges dismissed. More than half of the cases, police seized more than less than $1,000. So here's the thing. We also are disproportionately affected when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, which is also basically theft by police. So I think that's also another thing to also talk about as well. The criminal justice system when it comes to being black in this country. And this is not something that is just something that we've endured for 30 years ago and so suddenly we're doing better.
They have no idea what it's like to be pushed into crime, into a life of crime. Do you understand what it means to be a poor black person? No, you have no idea. So let me give you just a glimpse, just a small glimpse. Your mother is poor. Your father is gone. The state took him. She's all you got, but y'all don't have enough. So you go out and you do whatever it takes whatever it takes. You go get jobs. You do this. It's still not enough. You sell a little dope on the side. You have to, just to make the ends meet. You have to go into a life of crime. And guess what happens? Now they set you up. Now you about to get your number, and you about to go through that revolving door that they call the prison industrial complex, and you will be back. You will be back there. Now, there's like, I have been robbed by the police multiple times, and sometimes they only took my money. They left me with the dope because that's what's gonna make them more money. Y'all don't understand the shit that we have to go through. Now, I'm not saying I am a good guy for selling drugs to my neighborhood. No, I'm not a good guy for that. But who is the robber here? Who's the bad guy here when the cops is worse than the drug dealers? Who's the bad guy here? I'm only trying to make it. Y'all put up every wall and closed every door on me. I'm trying to get it how I can. And how I have the police here to save the day and rob me of everything I have. And say I bought it with dope money, even if I did. Right? Y'all have no idea what it's like to be pushed into a life of crime. Do not speak on Black issues if you're not going to speak on the real, if you're not going to get down to the nitty gritty, or at least have a Black person on your show to talk about what's going on, you know, and not one of them tap dancing ass coons. I mean, somebody that's really from the city, that's somebody that's really there, going through gentrification. Do you understand what that means? We are facing gentrification right now. Some of the biggest ramps gentrification that we have seen. We are displaced. Displaced in a nation that we shouldn't even be in.
So let me share this really quick. Let's humanize this for a second. This is not unusual for us to go through simply because of the color of our skin. This is a service member. This is someone who was in the military that was actually fighting for the country, and they got pulled over by police.
Let me see your hands. How many occupants are in the vehicle?
What's going on?
How many occupants are in your vehicle?
It's only myself. Why are your weapons drawn? What's going on?
Open the door slowly and step out. Open the door.
I'm not getting out the vehicle. What's going on?
Get out of the car.
What's going on?
Get out of the car now. Open the door. Get out of the car. Keep your hands outside the window.
My hands are right here. What's going on?
Get out of the car now. Get out of the car.
What's going on?
Get out of the car now. Get out of the car now.
I'm serving this country and this is how I'm treated?
Yo, what? Guess what? I'm a veteran too. I don't know, babe. Get out of the car.
What's going on?
Babe.
What's going on? You're fixing to ride the lightning, son.
I'm sorry, what?
Get out of the car now.
What's going on?
Get out of the car now. Work with us and we'll talk to you. Get out the car. You received an order. Obey it.
I'm honestly afraid to get out. Can I?
Yeah, you should be. Get out.
What's
going on?
He said, I'm afraid to get out of the car. And he said, yeah, you should be.
I bet.
So, any wonder why we go through what we go through in this country? And by the way, if he gets arrested because the police, which is also, by the way, inherently racist institution, arrests him and then put him in jail, and then he fails to go to work, guess what happens to him? Guess what happens to his job? And then he has that on his record. Guess what happens to him when he has that on his record when he tries to go for for further employment? What happens to him then? How is race and class? How is that connected? I have another one. And that video that I was sharing actually gets worse because he literally gets pepper sprayed for not complying. Let's share this also as well. I actually talked about this earlier this year because this is what was happening to a teenager, and a lot of people don't really regard this as a class issue, but this is ultimately a class issue as well. Let's get into this.
For Daryl George, just outside Houston, Texas, hair has defined his junior year of high school.
How has this all felt for you?
It's very stressful. I'm trying to maintain being a student while also having to deal with this.
The 18-year-old has now been suspended twice over his hairstyle at Barbers Hill High School, most recently in early December. The first time was back in August. School officials said George's braided locks fell below his eyebrows and earlobes, which violated the school district's dress code for boys.
Why should I cut my hair for my education? My hair has nothing to do with my education.
George was put in a disciplinary off-campus education program, and when he returned to school with his style intact, he was suspended again. The family filing a federal civil rights lawsuit against Texas Governor Greg Abbott and the state's attorney general in September, alleging that George's suspension violates the Crown Act, a Texas state law that took effect September 1st, prohibiting race-based discrimination, banning employers and schools from penalizing people because of their hair texture or protective styles, such as afros, twists, or dreadlocks. At least 24 states have their own version of the law, according to the think tank, the Economic Policy Institute. Much of that legislation following high-profile incidents of alleged hair discrimination against African Americans.
We're alleging that the grooming code of Barbers Hill ISD is unconstitutional. The law says whether or not you intend to target a specific protected class, if the end result is that only the protected class is affected, is discriminatory.
George's.
But we've been good for the last 30 years.
And for the last 30 years, let's see what has happened. I grew up fatherless, right? Like a lot of my homies did, like a lot of my niggas did. You think we not feeling those effects of the prison industrial complex coming and swoop up our fathers? You think we're not feeling the effects of the crack epidemic? You think those are just gone? You think those people are just gone? Like my auntie, still going back and forth with this fucking drug that the CIA put into our community, our own government poisoned us. You think we're not feeling the effects of this poisoned water that's been in our pipes, they have been neglecting to clean? You have no idea how much neglect we go through. And to sit here and be lectured by another rich white man about how good you have it is a slap in the face. It's disrespectful, and I wish if you're going to talk about class, talk about it all. Don't talk about the shit that make your audience feel good, because I know what you're doing. I know all these motherfuckers do. End up pandering to white people because that's where the motherfucking money at. Black people ain't got no money to be giving the streamers. Be giving the fucking podcasters. We're too busy damn near trying not to fucking drown in debt, medical debt, student loan debt, credit card debt that they said you couldn't write off anymore. Who's affected the most by that shit? Look up who's really affected by these things. Yes, white people are affected by it, but not like how we are, and not like how we should be, seeing that we are only 13% of this fucking country. There's no way we should be the majority of the prison population. That's like all us living in China, and China has a prison population majority white. Do you understand?
Let's continue this video.
The attorney says the district is engaging in a discriminatory pattern since back in 2020, 2 other students, both black teens, were also suspended for their hairstyles. In response, the Barbers Hill School District tells NBC News in part the claim is false, saying it has many African-American students who wear dreadlocks and other similar protected hairstyles and comply with the district's length policy. We have one who does not. The superintendent adding that there are some African-American students with religious exemptions for hair length, but, quote, we do not have an exception for I don't want to follow the rules. The superintendent also calling the lawsuit baseless and filing a lawsuit to clarify that the Crown Act does not address length or any other student expression, but instead protects the right to wear braids. Texas governors and attorney general's offices did not respond to our request for comment. As for Daryl George, his attorney says this legal battle has taken its toll. She requested a temporary injunction so George can return to school.
I feel like I ain't going nowhere with it as of right now, no.
His family representative telling us many have encouraged the teenager to cut his hair and let the case go.
Daryl has hair that's woven in his head from his grandfather and from other ancestors. And this is how he is connected to his people.
What does your hair and your hairstyle mean to you?
It just means a lot to me. It made me feel more closer to my people. Being without my hair is like cutting me from my people, not letting me, you know, express myself how I feel I should be.
All right, Zinkley joining us now. Zinkley, we hear this whole conversation around length versus braids. What exactly is the Crown Act, and where do we stand right now in any broader legislation on the federal level?
Yeah, Sam, good to see you. So the Crown Act is an acronym that stands for Creating a Respectful and Open World for Natural Hair. Of course, crown is also a term often used to refer to hair itself. And this legislation is particularly significant for the Black community. There are a variety of natural hairstyles many African Americans use interchangeably. Even on this show, I've showed up to work with short curly hair and long braids. Now, as I mentioned, and as you asked, 24 states have their own version of the Crown Act, but there was
By the way, Rome, let me ask you this. About 10 years ago, this lady that's on the screen right now, would you imagine her being able to rock this hairstyle 10 years ago?
Hell no. Hell no. They was telling us to straighten out our hair, get a perm, get a press, right? They want us to look more appealing to the white person,
to the mainstream audience.
And they telling like they are like the little boy that's being going through that bullshit at a school. They are trying to teach him young, comply, obey or die, comply or die. Like this is it. You have to obey. If not, we will take away your education. We'll make your life hard. We will put you in legal battles that we know you can't afford to keep fighting. Come on now.
Let me share this. This is out of the Boston Globe. It says that was no typo. The median net worth of Black Bostonians is $8. So it says the median net worth for non-immigrant African-American households in the greater Boston region is $8, according to the Color of Wealth in Boston. A 2015 report, not 30 years ago, 2015 report by the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, Duke University, and New School.
$8 man.
Real quick. Rome, do you mind muting yourself real quick? Sorry.
Yeah.
It says this Spotlight 7-part series, which began Sunday, tackles the city's most vexing question: does Boston deserve its racist reputation? And so it goes into how the racial wealth disparity that happens even in liberal cities like Boston, and how there is continuously a racial wealth disparity. But yet we've been good for the last 30 years. It doesn't seem like it bears out to me. Now, one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue because I have some other things to say, but I would like to also finish also what Jimmy was saying as well. So let's continue that.
Comedy. Back then, they couldn't get married. They could get fired from their job. They couldn't get housing. That's all over.
It's all over.
Dude,
it's not all over. Sorry, go ahead.
My auntie we lost our childhood homes, man. Mm-hmm. We had to stay in at least 10 different houses. We had to jump door to door, sometimes couch surfing, man. And it is so hard. It is so hard to get housing. The Section 8 voucher, you're going to be on there until you're 40 fucking years old before you even get a damn house. My mama had to move out of Michigan. She had to go to Ohio to go into low income housing. So how are we good? We can't even afford to have a home anymore. It's way worse. We are way worse off as a community. Nothing has been built here but liquor stores and dispensaries. They knocked down 40-something schools in Detroit, and they keep building prisons. What is that for? Who is that for? It's for the kids that we just took them schools away from, because we know they have no other opportunities out here, so they're gonna go back in that revolving door of the prison industrial complex. Do you know how hard it is to be a Black poor person in America and you screaming for help?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody look at you like, fuck wrong with this guy? Like, I'm poor, I'm hungry, I have to do this, I have to do that. I had to go into prostitution to help feed my brothers and sisters. Do you understand me?
Mm-hmm. Let me share this as well. This is within the last few days. This wasn't 30 years ago. I hate when this happens. All right. Hang on, guys. I'm gonna have to go around this I'm gonna have to go around this paywall. Fortunately, I can't share this like that. Great. So while this is loading, because for some reason it won't allow me to share it right now. But as far as this article goes, this actually is talking about Rom, can you mute yourself real quick for a second? Sorry. But what this article is actually talking about is that Navy Federal Credit Union is actually under fire for a class action lawsuit for its racial discrimination against Black borrowers within their account holders. And so it talks about how 75% of the borrowers that they approve of are white borrowers. And this class action lawsuit was presented 23 days ago. So it wasn't 30 years ago.
Don't leave out that, because maybe people like, oh, well, maybe your credit was bad. No. These Black people, the majority of the Black people that was trying to borrow had more money and had more wealth than the white families that they let borrow. So it ain't about having money, ain't about none of that shit. Because remember, we had stories about real estate. Remember how the real estate game go? When that Black family tried to get their house appraised, and then they was like, oh, well, it's only like 75,000, 100,000, whatever it may be. They get another one, put up some white people pictures, and now they're talking about the $300,000 and the $400,000, right? Come on, man.
Let's share this. All right, hang on. Let me make sure I have this. Okay. So this is the article here. It says civil rights attorney Ben Crump files class action discrimination lawsuit against Navy Federal Credit Union. It says Navy Federal Credit Union, the largest credit union in the United States, is facing a class action lawsuit accusing it of racial discrimination in its home mortgage practices. It says BET reported civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump and Adam Levitt filed the class action lawsuit Sunday in a federal court in Virginia on behalf of Sherelle Jacob, a 40-year-old Black resident in Washington State, and her husband, who is in the armed services, and Lakita Oliver, a 44-year-old Black resident of Miami-Dade County, Florida, who works as a capital improvement project analyst. The women say Navy Federal rejected their home loan applications despite having great credit and six-figure incomes. According to the lawsuit, Navy Federal violated the Fair Housing Act of 1968 and the Equal Opportunity Act. The lawsuit cited a report from CNN published earlier this month that Navy Federal, which lends to military service members, defense personnel, veterans, and their families, approved more than 75% of white borrowers who applied for new conventional home purchase mortgage in 2022, according to most recent data available from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. However, less than 50% of Black borrowers who applied for the same type of loan were approved. So basically, this is also happening today, this year, which a lot of people aren't, according to Jimmy, it's like, well, this is all 30 years ago. So let's continue to some of the claims as well. Let's continue.
Exactly. And so to keep pretending like we're living 30 years ago is exactly what the establishment wants to do. And by the way, all this talk about trans issues and talk about white, this doesn't come from the grassroots up. This comes directly from BlackRock and Larry Fink. This comes from Vanguard. This is so the most murderous companies who are raping the planet can shroud themselves in an air of virtue. And how do they do it? They do it by trans issues and LGBTQ and white supremacy and inclusion and equity and all that stuff. And that's there to keep us divided, because the only thing that scares the establishment is when people from the left and the right realize they have more in common that divides us, and they have shared enemy, and that shared enemy is the oligarchy. That's the only.
Now, so one thing I will say, sorry, go ahead.
So you don't hear from regular trans people, you don't hear their outcries, you don't hear outcries from regular day-to-day Black people, brown people. Like, we don't see millions of people getting deported. Right, we're gonna sit here and act like that. What the fuck is you talking about? We are saying this shit from our own mouths, not from no billionaires. I don't know what type of game that they're playing. Yes, they have money in all of this shit. Whether it be white people coming together, Black people coming together, Black and brown people. Yeah, they got money against all that shit. But the working class is screaming for help, and here you are ignoring them, saying that they are co-op. What kind of shit is that? What divides us, Jimmy? Is it not talking about these things, or is it just ignoring, just ignoring it, and just like, okay, we all can come together because times are better? What? No, they're not. Man, you have no idea what my family is going through right now. You have no idea what the families in Detroit is going through right now. God, man, this shit pisses me. This shit pisses me. I need a cigarette. I'll be back.
All right, let me continue this.
Only thing that scares them. And so if they can keep us talking about race, and if they can keep us talking about gender and ethnicity, that's a gift to them, because it keeps everybody divided. Would you agree with that?
Who keeps divided?
Well,
Jimmy?
no, I would agree with it.
Stop the fucking video. Who keeps divided, man? Who are you talking to? Who is your audience? Because the only people that do not want to talk about some shit like that is racist white people. And why would I ever want to connect or do a collide with a motherfucker who don't even want to hear me out? How does that divide the working class from me talking about my experience as a Black person in America? And that's the thing. Because white people feel like they are a part of this American thing. So they feel like when we talk bad about America, we're talking bad about white people. They get offended for the establishment. If we can't sit here and talk about what's really going on, then why are we talking at all?
Mm-hmm. We have to be able to tell the truth. Here's what Tucker says.
Vehemently, and that was so nicely explained. I can't really add much to it other than to say there's been research on this. I'm sure you've seen this. The incidence of the phrase racist, white supremacist, white nationalist in the New York Times, which is easily searchable, shot up right after Occupy Wall Street. So I'm not alleging a conspiracy. I think it's a conspiracy of instinct. Like, oh, wait, the one thing you can't criticize is finance. Let's get the peasants mad at each other. There's no question about that. I mean, in my opinion, watching the real crimes are mostly financial. And
So let me address this really quick.
Man, this
Because
shit
Tucker's actually correct. He says the real crimes are financial. Yes, they are. But disproportionately against whom?
White supremacy has nothing to do with this at all. White supremacy has nothing to do with Occupy Wall Street. Why Occupy Wall Street was even a thing?
Let me share something. Because he's correct. It is. There is. But there's also some racial elements to it as well. Let me get this really quick. So it says, does wage theft disproportionately impact Black employees? It says, did you know that the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 was established federal minimum wage and overtime pay and banned child labor, excluded housekeepers, laborers, nannies, tipped employees, and day laborers? This law encouraged employers to steal real wages from their employees. Unfortunately, wage theft still occurs today. Therefore, this is what you should know. It says talk about wage theft. It says, who receives the greatest impact? Are you one of the Americans that experience overtime, minimum wage, or meal break violations, which occur in 1925 at even 58% of the workforce? Low-income individuals are disproportionately impacted. Women, immigrants, and people of color experience higher levels of wage theft. For example, although they only comprise of 10% of workforce, 16% of wage theft impacts Black Americans. This led to 196,000 Black workers experiencing wage theft, up to $22 million in 2020. This is disproportionate to other racial groups. So if you want to talk about how we're treated by corporations, then yes, the disproportionality when it comes to how we experience wage theft is actually higher. So when it comes to race and class, there's another intersection there. So let's continue.
I'm just amazed. I've lived here for 54 years, and I have never one time on television or any public forum with a big audience heard a real debate about taxes. So we tax people twice as much for working as we do for investing. Why do we do that? I mean, right? So does that mean that investing is twice as virtuous as working? Do we seek to discourage work? I mean, we seek to discourage smoking. That's why we tax cigarettes so heavily. But we tax work at twice the rate of investing. So we're saying investors are twice as good people. They're making twice as important a moral choice as someone who just goes to work every day. Like, that's insane. Why don't we have parity in tax rates? And by the way, maybe there's some like crazy complex economic reason that we don't. I don't know. I'm very open-minded. Maybe if we did that, America would go on. Why don't you explain it to me? Why don't you explain that to me? Why people are getting taxed at half the rate for investing that I'm paying for working?
Now, I actually agree with that, because the thing is that ultimately the investing is really geared towards the people who are affluent, who are the capitalists that own the means of production, when in reality, it should be, the ease should be on the workers. But one thing he's not talking about is, well, why don't we just make the minimum wage into a living wage? Why don't we just, in fact, if we want to attack the wealth disparities, why isn't Tucker Carlson talking about reparations for Black people within this country? Because ultimately, we have been for hundreds of years working for free in this country in order to build it up so that people like Tucker Carlson can have a little bit more money in his bank account, legacy-wise. But when it comes to actual fairness, which reparations is actually about fairness. But is he going to talk about that? I don't think so. I don't hear him talking about it.
He'd probably gag at that thought.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can. And by the way, well, maybe someone can. No one has, because we've never had that debate. It's more like, oh, trans lives, or some stupid academic bullshit debate about, I don't know what. And none of this stuff is relevant to even.
I didn't know that the lives of workers
oh
were
my God.
academic debate. I mean, aren't trans people workers too?
How the fuck he sit there and let him say that on his program?
Like, look, hang on. Let me say this. Redheads comprise of about 2% of the population, right? Which is hundreds of thousands of people, right? From what we can see, trans people are about what, 1.5% of the population. But if we said that about the lives of redheads, there will be outcry. But if we say that about trans people, it's like that's just an academic conversation. When it comes to there are tons and tons of legislation, anti-LGBTQ legislation being passed. It's funny because how much of the population actually comprises of Palestinian people, and yet we are coming together against the genocide that's happening in Gaza, which is correct. We should be coming together about that, but yet we can't come together and actually advocate for our fellow workers who may be of a different gender identity.
The white man has a God complex, man. The white man has a God complex. He feel like it's that main character syndrome where everything has to be, every conversation has to be around me, or don't make me feel uncomfortable, right? About calling out the racism and all the shit that we go through. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, when we speak on trans rights, or maybe what they're going through at the time, we're speaking on gay rights, or maybe what they're going through at the time, we're speaking on black rights, or the lack of. If that make you feel some type of way, then maybe you some type of way, motherfucker. We shouldn't change. You should do the changing. If minorities are speaking up, we have been down, we have been kicked down, but now we are loud enough to be heard. And you telling us, shut the fuck up. How dare you? And to say that these people, they're it don't even matter. Speaking about some trans people, it don't. What the fuck is this guy talking about? I'm come here, Connie, because this nigga make me mad.
All right. Let's continue.
Even to me, and I make a lot more than the average person. You know, what if I made 50 grand a year? This would be a deeply relevant debate, but America has not been treated to that debate because we're arguing about race and endless race stuff. And last point, which is obvious, I'm not sure anybody could find tangible ways in which any Black American or any white American has benefited from the furious debate and chin tugging and yelling about race over the past 5 years. If you can find one.
Yo, look at your motherfucking grandkids. Look at your motherfucking nieces and nephews. Why are they more progressive than the generation that's before them? Because of people like us keep speaking up. We keep speaking up, and we put eyes on these things. We put eyes on neighborhoods that you never will walk in. And if you drive by, I guarantee you'll rather run out of gas and call AAA before you step out of that motherfucker. We are putting eyes on things and attention on things that people will have no idea on. So now we have younger generations that's way more progressive than Generation X, way more progressive than the older millennials, way more progressive than the fucking boomers. So yes, debates are good. You should have these debates amongst each other. And this is why it's so much racism amongst white families, because y'all don't push back on that bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You let your granddad and your uncle say some racist ass shit, and you just, oh my God, I'm just not gonna be like that. No, not only don't be like him, push back on that motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. I have some notes written down after this point. So, because both sides separate race from class, Tucker, you're separating race from class, favoring class. and others who are liberal will separate race from class and favor race. So the needle doesn't move. Also, the systems which keep white supremacy in place are not dismantled because it keeps us divided, remains in place. Not talking about white supremacy is like not going to the doctor about that lump on your testicles. You can avoid talking about it all you want, but the problem will still remain until you address it and treat it. Their ignorance is baffling. So let's continue.
Person other than the chicks who run BLM will have all.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say.
Okay.
Those houses. Sure.
Talcum Eggs. You know Talcum Eggs.
Oh, okay.
I love
Sean
him.
White
No, but I mean, aside from like the obvious charlatans, and I'm sorry, I was going to add one thing because I know Cornell and I've always really liked Cornell. I went to Africa with him 20 years ago with Sharpton and had the best time ever. And I think he's legit smart. I will say that. I mean, he like reads Russian language, which is hard, and he has good instincts. But the fact that his default is always this shallow, effectively neoliberalism, which he would hate it if he heard me say that, but it's true. Why is that? He knows better. He's not dumb. He knows what's happening. And the truth is just to cover. It's his defense mechanism. Like he doesn't want to.
This is coming from somebody who doesn't realize that actually Dr. Cornel West actually put out a book back then called Race Matters. This was years and years ago. And just as to address Tucker Carlson in this, the intersection of class and race isn't neoliberalism. The separation of class and race is neoliberalism.
Thank you.
The choosing the side of class over race as one over another divides us just like the establishment intended. Talking about class is like treating the problem that you don't know what it is, like putting a tourniquet on a gunshot victim. It will help a little, but it doesn't treat the underlying cause. Only talking about just race is like saying you have a bullet in your leg, but not actually treating the wound and taking it out and patching it up. So the thing is that you have to do both. The problem is you have one side that wants to do one and the other side that wants to do the other. Meanwhile, many of us are saying, no, you have to treat it both at the same time.
He does kind of want, still an endowed chair at Princeton. So if they come for him at all, he's like, race, trans, whatever. Like it's purely his force field. That's all it is. That's my opinion.
So
anyway.
So you are correct. I was a big fan of Dr. Cornel West again until he came on my show, and then he is really smart, like you said. He reads Russian. All this stuff. And that's why it was so disappointing when he pretended he was dumber than a pothead jagoff comedian for that entire interview. Exactly. He tried to make the case that Donald Trump tried to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power on January 6th, which I know he's smarter than. And a bunch of Second Amendment gun nuts showed up at the Capitol to try to overthrow the government, and son of a bitch, they all forgot their guns. Isn't that the weirdest thing? Oh my God. It's like, Vinny, you didn't bring the guns? No, I brought the mittens. Anyway, of course, he knows better. And then I tried to point out that, one of his issues is Stop Cop City, people who are protesting the expansion of the police state in Atlanta. And I tried to point out to him that the same RICO laws that, by the way, were invented to go after the mafia, which was why everybody was okay with them. Well, you're only going to use them to go after the mafia. Well, now they're using them to go after Donald Trump, a former president who's a political enemy of the establishment and the number one opponent of the current president, Joe Biden.
Here's the thing. Donald Trump isn't any enemy of the establishment. He's a part of it.
He's part of the damn establishment.
It's just theatrics. What the
today.
Joe Biden administration did is pretty much purely theatrics. What about the FBI targeting the African People's Socialist Party in the same week that the FBI went to Trump after Trump in Mar-a-Lago? How many people are actually talking about that? Where Omali Yeshitela has been coming on independent media to actually talk about what they've been going through in regards to the FBI coming after them. But is he talking about that?
used a RICO statute to go after him and indict him. Not only did they use the same RICO statute to go after Stop Cop City protesters, they used the same grand jury. The same grand jury indicted them. And I tried to point that out to Cornel West. And when I said, you see the game that's being played now, he pretended he didn't. And then he called me a Trumper. And so for that, I don't think I can forgive him. And I won't. And I won't stop bringing it up either. Just like I won't stop bringing up John.
That's just so, but it's so sad though. It's so sad. I mean, because Cornell, the whole shtick is I'm a free man. I'm totally, I'm an old blues man. He's always saying that, right? And he could be. He actually could be a free man because he has all the qualities required. He's self-aware. He's smart. He's wildly articulate, and he's a good dude.
He's smart. He's wildly articulate. Gosh.
Where did I hear this before? Oh my God, man! The dog whistles is loud today.
Story of my life, especially as somebody who speaks the way I speak and presents the way I present myself. I've heard this so many times in my life. Good Lord.
Actually, in my opinion. So why not be? And I think he's had a series of, very complex personal life, and they basically just kind of have him. Like he needs the gig, and so he has to, repeat the slogans.
And that's why
it bums me out every time I see him.
It totally bummed me out, and I tried to impress upon him, why do you call Donald Trump a fascist? You won't call Joe Biden a fascist. And
I agree. Joe Biden is both a fascist,
both of them are fascist.
as Donald Trump.
And we had our back and forth. Well, I ain't gonna call it a back and forth, but we had our disagreements with Dr. Cornel West about, when we reviewed the Jimmy Dore interview he did. We agree with Jimmy Dore on some points. We agree with Dr. Cornel West on some points. But see, this is the thing, man. It is so much a slap in the face to hear from a rich white man to tell us to stop talking about race. The reason why we talk about race is because you don't. Somebody has to put eyes on these things. People would not know what's really going on in the black community if it wasn't for black activists, if it wasn't for black people actually saying what the troubles we are going through. Leave it up to the media, and they tell you we're fine. Leave it up to independent media, and now they're saying we're fine, we're better off. But I go outside, and I see my future has been taken away from me. Generational wealth is an illusion in the black communities.
Mm-hmm. Let's continue.
And you pretend like fascism only comes when Donald Trump is president. We're living in it. We just lived through 3 years of COVID fascism.
Okay, Jimmy, let me ask you this. When it comes to the people who were disproportionately affected by COVID, let me ask you this. Which racial group was disproportionately affected by COVID? Also, ask yourself, why was it disproportionate? Interesting, right? When you start to think about it, why was it disproportionate? Well, come to find out, it's disproportionate because of white supremacy.
And you know what? I went in Toledo, Ohio. I was doing a giveaway during the pandemic. This is in the middle of it. I'm doing a giveaway, and they was paying poor black people, homeless black people, to get their vaccines. So I asked this one dude, how many vaccines have you gotten already? You like, shit, I got like 13. 13 vaccines. So we want to talk about all the vaccine and this and that and blah, blah, blah. You have to talk about who's affected the most by it and who's being used as a guinea pig. Who's being used as a guinea pig for these experiments? I mean, shit, we can go with the prison population, but who's that? Who's the prison population? Who?
Mm-hmm. Let's continue. Because I got my closing thoughts as well on all this.
Presented with it, and when presented with it and the chance to fight against it, you turned a blind eye to it on purpose, and that's what he did, and his whole class did that. Because
no, he did not, because in the interview he actually says he wants to lead a commission to actually investigate the effects of the jab and how it has been manipulated by the big pharma as well. So that's not being completely honest there, James.
Because Cornel West is not from the working class. I'm from the fucking working class. Not
actually.
No.
Hold up. Because if you look at if you look at Jimmy's Wikipedia, I'm not even going to bring it up. I have it here, but I'm not going to bring it up. Jimmy Dore, even though he comes from Chicago and his father was a police officer, his father also owned a bricklaying business, which he's going to bring out that I used to, do bricklaying, which was his father's business. And Jimmy also went to a private school for 12 years. So is he really working class like the rest of us? Because Dr. Cornel West went to a public high school.
We got to remember when rich people say I'm working class, it means I had to work. Right? Even though they are middle class, but they still consider themselves workers because they actually had to go work, but they are still better off. This man has generational wealth, basically, right? Again, nigga. Well, it's crazy to say, even if you are somewhat the working class, you are not the poor class, and it shows from you wanting to shut the fucking black people up, because ain't no poor working white man, you know what I'm saying, that feel that type of way that want to shut me up. Like, no, I know, man, come on, man, let's keep it real. Oh, shit.
Here it says Dore's father was a policeman who owned a brickwork business, right? It says that, he attended Catholic schools. A Catholic school is a private school. So, I mean, if that's working class, well, that's a lot better than people like me. That's a lot better than people like Dr. West, because Dr. West actually went to a public schools.
He just got rich as he got older. I mean, shit, selling all them damn books and being allowed.
I'm not saying that Dr. West isn't working class or Jimmy is rich. I'm saying that they're relatively both the same class throughout their entire life.
Man.
So if you're going to say that, well, Dr. West is not working class, but you both literally had around the same financial trajectory between each other. And then on top of it, now you're a comedian that makes millions of dollars a year. Dr. Cornel West is making $500,000 a year and working in colleges as well as doing speaking engagements. So as far as class goes, really, you both are relatively in the same class.
I mean, yeah, you can say you were a part of the working class, but you're not anymore.
Not anymore.
And it really shows, man. It really shows sometimes. And I hate how out of touch people get when they get money.
Let's continue this. We're almost done.
Class. Not Cornel West. He's lived in ivory towers his whole goddamn life. I was a bricklayer. I worked in masonry. I drove a
for your father's company.
Forklift. I was in the Teamsters. I've been a fucking stand-up comedian for 30 years. There was nothing more blue collar than banging your head against that comedy wall and entertaining drunks at midnight. I've come from that world, not him.
Interesting how you were able to live out your dreams. Some of us who are black, especially, we're not able. I'm just saying. I'm just now getting into my dream, and I'm gonna be 40 next year.
What is this? What is this? A big ass circle jerk? I did more. I did this. I did that. Okay.
Even still, let's take what Jimmy said at face value, right? Let's just say hypothetically, yes, Dr. Cornel West is of a higher class. You never heard of class traders?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got a couple of them.
Yeah. There are some people who may be of a higher class, but they have solidarity with the workers. But let's continue.
So he lives in ivory towers, and you're always going to be a class loyal, and that's what he was, and that's what he proved to be on my show, and that's what
Jimmy's part of a higher class, but he claims to be with the workers, so he's not class loyal, even though he's in a higher class.
was really disheartening. And he knows he's wrong.
You know, you don't have to be, though. You don't have to be. I will say, as I was hearing about how you grew up, it's like the opposite of how I grew up. And
yes, the opposite, because remember, Tucker Carlson is also a Swanson, meaning part of the Swanson food empire, meaning that Tucker Carlson is actually part and heir to a $1 million empire. So yeah.
I've kind of reached a lot of the same conclusions that you have, but maybe for different reasons. I just concluded that world is not worth living in. The people aren't that interesting. It's not that great, actually. All the things that people aspire to, when you see it, you're like, you know, it's not that impressive. I don't want to live like that. I don't want to be around those people. And so, like, the closer you get, so that's kind of the sad thing. It's like, even if you succeed, if you keep collecting merit badges and wind up wherever you think you want to be on someone's private plane, you know, it's like with Larry Fink.
Is he trying to say that Dr. Cornel West rubbed shoulders with Larry Fink? Because I didn't find any news regarding that.
You realize, like, I don't really want to be on a plane with Larry Fink. He's a pig, actually. And he's kind of dumb. You know, he's like smart in some specific way that's made him a billionaire, but like, he's not a great person. His wife doesn't respect him, that's for sure, or whatever. You know, like the familiarity with that world breeds more than contempt. It breeds loathing. At least that's how I feel. Like, I have zero interest in ever being in polite society ever again. And that's as heartfelt a statement as I can make.
So, let me go over a couple more factoids, and then I have some thoughts that I really want to share. Let me share this.
I mean, to sit here and kick it with Tucker Carlson, like everything is all right with this dude. Like, didn't this nigga say immigrants is making the country dirty?
Yep, he did.
Come on, man. What kind of? I don't know about this, dog. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know about
so
that.
It says LGBTQ youth are 120% more likely to experience homelessness, according to a recent study from the Chapman Hall at University of Chicago. LGBTQ young people are 120% more likely to experience homelessness than non-LGBTQ youth. Right off the bat, these young people are presented with an uneven playing field. True Colors United is working to level that field so that LGBTQ youth are no more likely to experience homelessness than anyone else. We've seen this higher risk reflected in our own research. It is estimated about 7% of youth in the United States are LGBTQ, while 40% of youth experience homelessness are LGBTQ. So it is a class issue, and it always has been a class issue. Let me ask you this. How did you people in this country who are black, how do we end up here? How did we get to this point?
Money, 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 money.
Ultimately, that's what it is. Now, I'm going to share this as well because I think this is a really interesting and very valid point that I want to share. Shout out to Midwestern Marx and shout out to Noah Krejcik for sharing this. Thank you so very much for this, because this is true class analysis that also incorporates race. Noah says, people have been asking me lately, why Du Bois? He talked about W.E.B. Du Bois. He says, why W.E.B. Du Bois is the father of American Marxism. Wasn't he just a liberal? Didn't he say some random stuff pulled out of context? Carlos Garrido recently wrote a brilliant paper on this, but unfortunately it's behind a paywall. Academic journalists are the worst and we're not allowed to republish it. So let me explain in brief. Marxism, or Marxism-Leninism, if you want to be technical about it, is universal. It is the universality of all society moving forward, gives us the laws of development. What Du Bois gives us is the particular. Black Reconstruction in America shows us, if not the primary particular form, then one of the most important particular forms of American class struggle. It gives us an analysis of the color line of how race and class function from that Marxist-Leninist universal understanding from the historical materialist viewpoint. It gives us the category of the Black proletariat as a class of enslaved workers and of the Second American Revolution that waged against the slavocracy of the dictatorship of the proletariat that was the Reconstruction South, the Freedmen's Bureau backed by the power of the Northern armies. But that isn't all Du Bois gives us. He gives us the materialist view of racism, proving that it wasn't racism that created chattel slavery, but instead chattel slavery that created racism. That the relations of the white proletariat had with the bosses and with the Black proletariat, all of this functions as an outcome of slavery. There's a lot of talk in Marxism about the steam engine, the spinning jenny, and other technological drivers of institutional capitalism. But the underlying every bit of it was chattel slavery feeding the British textile mills with cotton. Without chattel slavery, capitalism would have never lasted a day. Capitalism is very literally built on the foundation of the most brutal forms of oppression, of enslavement of man by man. Every view of American history from the Marxist perspective must begin with Marx and Engels and with Lenin and with Du Bois. There is no other way to arrive at a detailed Marxist analysis. Without this, we are lost and we are able to be manipulated into all sorts of quote unquote left deviations and dogmas. I've heard the left anti-immigrant sentiment these days. Du Bois cuts through all of it in one go and gives us a concrete foundation for our work today. Lastly, I have to say, read Du Bois yourself. Do not go into bits and pieces taken out of context, as you will find a bourgeois academy that attempts to turn Du Bois into something he's not. Just as you read Marx yourself, read Du Bois yourself. And so that's what Noah had to say. And I appreciate it from the Midwestern Marx because they have a high regard for somebody like W.E.B. Du Bois, who they regard as the father of American Marxism. And see, that's how it connects. Now, there is a great article that was written out of Black Agenda Report that I also want to bring into context with this as well, because I think this is also deeply important because a lot of people are not bringing this to the fore. So this is out of Black Agenda Report. This title of this article says, Understanding White Supremacy at the Center of the Class Over Race Debate. This was actually in response to the debate that Dr. Cornel West and Jimmy Dore actually had. So I want to go into this. So
all that shit means don't make me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about what my family did to your family. I don't want to talk about the generational wealth that we have. I don't want to talk about the gentrification that we are putting your families through. I don't want to talk about it. Don't tell me no. That's all that shit means, dude. Because even if I know we are fighting a lot of wars in this class, but I'm still fighting wars as a Black man that a poor white man would never, ever, ever face or ever understand.
So this says the 1934 West Coast Longshoremen strike planted the seeds for the creation of the Congress of Industrial Organizations the following year. The CIO set out to rebuke the racist practice of the American Federation of Labor, and white labor leaders consciously embraced African American struggle against discrimination in housing, employment, police misconduct, and the criminal justice system. As one example, the CIO played a critical role in running the release of James Hickman, a Black Chicago steelworker who was on trial in 1947 for fatally shooting the slumlord who deliberately set fire to his apartment, killing his 4 youngest children. So this actually is an article talking about how the AFL was being discriminatory and racist towards Black workers, and the formation of the CIO actually came about. So when it comes to class and race, this has been a debate that is as old as time that has been happening in this country. And so if we're going to talk about identity and race, and don't get me started on the disparities between gender, because we can talk about how a black woman makes 70% on the dollar to every white man. So class, race, identity, it all intersects. And that's the thing that we also have to come into conclusion with. So saying that we can't talk about these things is completely inaccurate. So I'm going to give these thoughts, and let me share this really quick, because ultimately I think Jimmy really missed the mark on this heavily. So let me share this really quick, because, okay. So if you are okay with talking about what's going on against Palestinians and the atrocities they're enduring because of their identity and how it connects to class, employment, education, housing, etc., then you should be okay with other people who have other identities doing the same and how it affects them. College students are literally being targeted for speaking out against what's going on in Gaza, and their careers are at risk. Is this a class or identity issue? Black students with locks are suspended and moved to an alternative school because he won't cut his hair. Is this class or identity? Navy Federal Credit Union is discriminating against Black borrowers, making it harder for Black people to obtain home ownership in 2023. Is this identity or is this class? This isn't about making white people feel bad. This is about making them realize that they still benefit from a system that divides workers. If they want to unite with us, this means dismantling a system that only favors one worker above another. This means solidarity with other workers of other identities. Us bringing up white supremacy and LGBTQ rights means that we are showing you how you can indirectly benefit all workers by not only helping to implement universal programs, but to walk away from bigoted ideas and mentalities that keep us divided and keep white people from struggling as well. Some boats need to be seen that they're at the bottom so we can realize that they're there. Then we need to use the rope or pulley to bring them up to the surface so that we can finally lift all boats. Does pulling them up to the surface benefit any of the other boats that are already on the surface? At that point, no. But once they are all at the surface, then the rising tide will lift all of us so we can have a larger armada against the elites that are making our lives worse. If a tide lifts all boats, what about the boats that are underwater at the bottom? This means not only identifying the different vessels that are underwater, but using special tools to bring them up to the surface. But if you're fighting against that, then your armada will be smaller, more divided, and incomplete. This is a class war, and you need all the vessels you can get. Dividing the workers undermines and undercuts that work. If you're doing what the liberals are doing, the only difference is that they uphold identity over class, and you hold class over identity, when in reality they are one and the same. Trying to separate class by identity is like trying to separate an engine from the wheels of a car. The engine is the identity. It can turn and it can work, but it cannot mobilize and go anywhere. The wheels are class, and they can go places, but there's no driving force behind them to make them go. Keep them separate, and they can only do so much, but together they can run the elites over. Telling candidates to not talk about white supremacy is akin to not teaching critical race theory because it will hurt white people's feelings. Our goal isn't to hurt your feelings. Our goal is for you to change the system in which you benefit the most from. It's like being in the house on a cold day. We're banging on the doors and windows to let us in. But now you're saying that the banging is hurting your feelings because you're inside and we're outside. No, just unlock the door and open it so we can come in. Then we can go together once we're inside and kick the elites out of the master suite together. If you don't know, acknowledge and treat the problem, you can't solve the problem. If white supremacy is a tool used by the elites to keep us divided, then we should know what the tool is and how it's being used to keep us divided so that we can throw that tool away and truly unite.
That was beautiful, man. That was beautiful. But you know what? This is how I know these people do not organize with black people or any brown people for that matter. This is how you can tell. Because there is no way you can go to a black leader, a black activist, and say, hey, we all should come together, but stop talking about the things that you are going through. Make it all about make it all about class. That's just it. Like, hold on, bro. I live in a black community. I only can speak on what I see. What I see is white supremacy. What we're going through is white supremacy, what we was birthed in. How you expect to connect with working class black and brown folk if you don't want them to speak on what the hell that they are going through? And this is how I know. They're not saying that they're going to organize with us. They're saying we should drop everything and get up under their leadership, get up under their umbrella. That's what this means.
You cannot lead a true class war while leaving the most marginalized people at the back. In fact, the people who are the most marginalized need to be the ones who actually lead this. It is not just people who are of color, like black and brown people. It is not just LGBTQ, but you also need to have people who have different neurodivergence, people who may be disabled as well. And the voices of them also need to be listened to in order to achieve this, because you're just going to leave them in the lurch if you do not listen to them. And the thing is that when it comes to white people, they need to be reminded that we live in this system. See, the thing is that when it comes to people like myself, I am here to remind you of a system that constantly keeps me and people like Rome as second and third class citizens.
Literally.
We are literally second and third class citizens in this country. If you want us to truly unite with you, you need to also listen to our concerns as well. And by the way, one of the things I hate is that people are okay with somebody like Donald Trump speaking unabashedly and bombastically what he wants to say. But the minute somebody like Dr. Cornel West does the exact same thing, it's like, well, no, you can't do that. I'm sorry.
I don't like I'm a full-on communist, man. I don't expect much from Dr. Cornel West. He's not going to be as left as me. I'm not voting any fucking way. But to sit here and like this shit is assaulting, man. If anything, it's assaulting. And to throw, salt in the wound, he has one of the most racist men in media talking about it. Like that's crazy. I don't know. I can't rock with that. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, that's the thing. And the thing is like, if you're sitting here talking about, well, we can't talk about white supremacy, then you just don't want to acknowledge the problem. If you don't want to acknowledge the problem, then good luck trying to actually get to the solution. And the crazy part is that we have to link race and class together because they've always been together. It has always been coupled together. Identity and class have always been.
These people are reformists. These people are reformists in revolutionary clothing. Because ain't no way you can see this system. You can see what everybody is going through. You got all the percentages all up in your head, and you didn't come down to the conclusion, or you didn't come down to the answer that, okay, this is obviously white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Let me share this.
I mean, from not even just black people that's going through it in America because of what white people was doing. I'm talking about Congo. You know what I'm saying? I'm all throughout Africa. Look what's going on, and pay attention. Mm-hmm. Pay attention. And if 1 + 1 don't equal 2 to you, then you just a fucking idiot.
Let me share this. Today's racial wealth gap is wider than the 1960s. This is less than 10 years ago. This wasn't 30 years ago. It says wealth inequality in the United States still has a strong racial dimension. That's according to an analysis from the American Urban Institute released Wednesday. Racial inequality grew between 1963 and 2013, according to Urban's analysis of 3 different consumer finance surveys. Yes, the average wealth has increased over the past 50 years, but not at the same rate for everyone. The bottom 10 percentile has fared the worst. Actually, its average wealth declined, but the middle of the wealth distribution, those with about $40,000 in assets in 1963, has seen its wealth double. The top 90 percentile has seen its wealth quadruple, and the really rich, the top 99% percentile, has seen its wealth increase 6-fold. So while the mid-wealth families saw their wealth increase by the highest percentage, the families near the top of the wealth distribution obviously had a lot more to start with. So if you look at this, it actually talks about how those who have generational wealth were actually able to increase their wealth. But most Black people do not have generational wealth. So they're still affected by it even down to this day. And that equity has not been fulfilled. That equality has not been fully achieved. So it is a class issue, and it always has been a class issue. And it won't stop being a class issue until we acknowledge the problem and we try to do what we can to fix it. But it has to be done by the people who it privileges. You have to be a Karen against the white supremacist system in order to change it. Because the thing is, we can try to change it all we want, but if it doesn't benefit us, how can we really change it? We can speak about it, but who has the power to really change it?
All right.
The ball is really in your court. We can try it as much as we can, but it has to be unified. The solidarity has to be there. And in order for that solidarity to take place, you have to take some of these bigoted ideas that, oh, we're all just good, and toss that out the window and actually see us for who we are.
That's some of the most racist shit that you can tell me.
You can see Palestinians going on for what they're going through in Gaza, but you can't see us. Come on now. Use that same gift of sight that you have to see the people in Palestine going through what they're going through, and look at the Black people in the country in which you reside and see what we're going through too. That's the point.
The people of Hades. Like, come on, man. Look what we are doing to Black people across the fucking world. Be for real with yourself. Like, I'm telling you, that's some of the most racist shit somebody can tell me, is that, oh, we're better off. No, I'm actually worse off than my grandfather. My grandfather had money. My grandfather had money, and when he died, he had shit left. He bought my grandfather, bought my grandmother a house, he bought his side chick a house. He had money. I'm worse off than my grandfather. How is that? You know how long I've been homeless most of my adult life.
So let me share this. U.S. prison population by race. Black is nearly 40% of the U.S. prison population. We're only 13% of the population. By the way, just to let you know, the exoneration rate among Black people is the highest in the entire country. We literally have the highest exoneration rate in this country. Why?
Targeted. And I'm like, man.
So,
I don't know.
In conclusion, Jimmy, James, please educate yourself, and please do not say falsehoods against your audience by saying things like, oh, well, we're so much better off than we were 30 years.
How can you say that when you never lived in a Black community? You never lived or been a part of a Black community. How can you speak for them? How can you speak for them? Like, I can't speak for the white community. I don't know what's going on in the white communities, whether they're losing their wealth or not. Whether they got graffiti on their buildings or not, I don't know. But I know what's going on in the black community, and you cannot sit here and speak for people that you are not a part of. Now, am I saying that you can't speak on black issues? No. But if you are, be correct.
Be correct. And come correct.
Come correct.
Mm-hmm. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. Now, as far as that's concerned, I think I addressed what I need to address. And so I'm gonna do some house cleaning really quick, and I can go into the chat really quick, just a little bit, but let me just thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys have not, please make sure to like the stream as well. This pushes me out into the algorithm. It is very much appreciated. So thank you so very much for that. Just want to give a shout out and thank you to all the patrons on Patreon as well as Coffee. For without you guys, I would not be able to do this, to talk about subjects like these important subjects that affects us on a daily basis. If you guys have not already, then you guys can also become a patron on Patreon. So thank you so very much. Thank you to the Coffee members, as well as anybody that sends me any mutual aid via PayPal. Yes, my channel is demonetized, so you guys can support me on Patreon or PayPal at this time. Just as an aside, just want to share with you guys the tiers as well on my Patreon, just so that you guys can be aware of what tiers are available for Patreon as well. Let me share this with you guys. So if you guys would like to become patrons on Patreon, you guys can become JB members, Solidarity, Comrade, Jaybefaunters, Super Jaybefaunters, Super Duper Jaybefaunters, and Mega Jaybefaunters. So thank you so very much for that as well. And just to give a big shout out, thanks to new patrons on my Patreon. Thank you so very much to Geo and Lariat for becoming new patrons on Patreon. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it very much.
I see we got a troll in the comments, but you know what? I'm gonna address him because you know idiots like that still need education. And he said black people aren't being bombed. Oh, but we are. But we are.
The move bombing that happened in the 1980s. I mean, that happened.
But we are. Do you know we are literally being burnt out of our communities also by white supremacists? So how can we not talk about this? It was a boxer. He just went back home and bought his whole block. He bought his whole block, talking about making. He's going to turn them into housing for low income, for people with low income. Okay, tell me why the next day the block is burnt the fuck down. Now, where have we heard this? Where have we seen this before? Right? Where have we seen this before? Black communities got bombed. It's not only one community that has been bombed. Multiple, over 18 black communities have been bombed by the U.S. police and the fucking military. That is your history. You should know this. You Americans, you stupid Americans.
So let's go through the chat. So
No box. It's the mail, it never fails.
Violence says, Violence says the IDF is literally training killer cops. Anyone can see that. Yes, and also look at how the IDF, as well as a lot of Israelis, treat Africans within Israel. They're not very kind to them. And so guess what? The police force in this country also is a racist institution. I don't care if you have black police officers; they're cops first and black second.
You got a black president. That don't mean racism went any fucking where.
Mm-hmm. Rondo says an apology isn't saying you're sorry. An apology is correcting the behavior or thought pattern that made the apology necessary in the first place. Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Let me see. DC says LGBT folk gained equal rights in 2020 when Neil Gorsuch voted in the majority opinion and SCOTUS protect sexual orientation and gender identity under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. That may be true, but why? But here's the thing: even though the Civil Rights Act in 1964 happened, why is there still disparities for black people?
Man, why are we still passing laws to protect minority groups?
We couldn't even get an anti-lynching bill passed in this country. So I'm sorry, DC, but here's the thing, right? Just because the law is in place doesn't mean it's actually being enforced. What good is a law if it's not being enforced? Number one. Number two, yes, there may be a law in place, but what good is it doing if we're still being disproportionately affected? So there's disproportionately being affected among black people. There's also disproportionately being affected among LGBTQ people.
That shit ain't nothing but hogwash. That shit is a screen cover for another politician to be like, look what I did. Okay, but what it actually do? Who has it actually protected? Right? Because as I can see, he ain't protecting nobody. These people are still going through it, and they are being targeted not only by regular citizens, but by their government, by the police force. You guys have no idea how much of a target on your back that shit is.
Mm-hmm. Jonas says Jimmy really expected Cornell to not talk about black issues and just speak about class only. That's just stupid. Like, as if we didn't experience racism in this country and it's connected to our class.
And the thing is, even if Cornell is a rich man, he still faced racism just like anybody else can. There's levels to this shit. And sometimes you might not get called the ER. Sometimes, like I just explained this. Just because you're in this shop don't say no blacks allowed anymore, don't mean it's not racist. All they got to do is put an $800 price tag on it. Put an $800 price tag on the shirt. That tells me no blacks allowed. And then what happens when that rich black man finally goes in that store? Oh, they looking at him. They watching him. Now he has to record all these niggas racist and blah blah. Yeah, we racist, motherfucker. You think because you got money, you're not a nigga? Oh, you still a nigga. You just a fancy nigga. You just a monkey with fancy clothes on and a chain. But we still feel the same about you, the same way we feel about those motherfuckers.
So thank you so much. Tacoba Kamani says, poor is poor. This is correct. But white folks aren't held back for being white. That's the difference. And that's really the definition of white privilege. Or if you don't want like the word privilege, then I'll say white advantage. Because that's what it is. It's an advantage within a system that is tailored towards you. So therefore, we ultimately are treated with prejudice all the time just because of the color of our skin. Take a look at the
white people like, I'm poor. I don't have no privilege. Look, if you ain't smart enough to finesse the system the way your ancestors did, that's on you, not me. If you don't see the privileges that you have, if you don't see the loopholes that you can take advantage of, we can go to the same bank. We just proved this. We can go to the same bank. I can have more money. I can be in the six figures, and you probably still will get a loan faster than I would. Come on now. If you ain't finesse, that's on you. Not me. Don't be mad at me. But we all fucked up in this motherfucker.
So let me continue. I'm just going up, trying to catch different. Eric T. Red says none of us are going to read Du Bois ourselves. Maybe I can read it on this channel. I can do that. By the way, I would encourage people like Jimmy Dore to pick up Assata Shakur's autobiography if you would like to. I made it easy. You can actually listen to it on my channel because I actually have a playlist where I actually read Assata Shakur's autobiography. If you would like to, I do recommend that Jimmy picks this up and reads it. Also, if you would like to, Jimmy, I encourage you to pick up Blood in My Eye by George Jackson. I read this entire book on my channel on Rockfin. If you would like to, you can go into my Rockfin channel and listen to me read it as well. That's also there too. Because
I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why the things that our leaders had spoken on 30 to 40, 50 years ago before they was assassinated still rings true to this day. There's a reason why people still look at Malcolm X for wisdom, look at Martin Luther King for wisdom, because they are still going through the same damn things, if not worse. Worse. Damn shame,
so
man.
Katie Lewis says for immigration, there's a difference between acknowledging the capitalist fault and driving immigrants to the U.S. and ended up hurting workers and straight up blaming immigrants. That's clownish. So yeah, if we're going to talk about immigrants, the thing is that you also need to talk about the U.S. foreign policy that drives immigrants to come to this country, because the U.S. foreign policy has turned their countries upside down because of destabilization, so that they can keep it like that, so that they can extract as much resources from those countries as possible. So if you actually want
to take
the
the people and feed them straps.
I'm sorry?
They take the people and feed them straps.
Yeah.
Little
if you really
slave
want,
labor, man. Come on.
yeah, if you want to fix the immigration issue, then stop the U.S. foreign policy that destabilizes their countries. Look,
let's be real. They need new niggas, right? And what I mean by that is black people ain't working for free no more. They need new niggas. The immigrant is the new nigga. They need new slaves. People that's gonna work for a little bit of nothing, happy because they got a roof over their head, and a couple of a couple of coins in their pocket. They need new niggas. That's all what this is about. They need new slaves. And that's all these migrants are. When they come over here, they literally work for slave wages, man. Some of them getting paid worse than what slaves used to get paid. Some of them don't even get paid at all.
So, as far as that's concerned, so I didn't want to go this long, but I did. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. I said what needed to be said. But James, tighten up, because the thing is that when it comes to the working class, identity is also tied to class. So please stop dividing the workers and actually unite the working class if that's really your goal, because separating the working class like this just doesn't work. We have to acknowledge the disparities between workers, so then we can actually work to end that disparity so that we can all move together to take out the elites and actually build a country that's best for all of us. And that means also acknowledging the presence and not disparaging the people who are also workers that may be different from you and me.
You're not gonna build no collision talking about, oh, let's just talk about race. What, nigga? I mean, let's just talk about class. Okay, and then what? Because it's gonna go back, it's gonna boil back to race. Why are we going through this? Racism. Why we don't have no healthcare? Racism. Why we don't have this? Racism. It fuels this fucking country. It fuels the economy. It put money in your fucking pockets. It put food on your table, clothes on your kids' back. Yes, racism fuels this goddamn country. And if you can't talk about that, then you have some learning to do. Maybe you shouldn't talk to the masses yet. Maybe you should take a step back, read a couple books, go in a couple of black communities, see what they're really going through. And listen to these people, how they worse off than their grandmothers. Listen to these people when they're telling you they had to shack up with 3 different generations, shacking up in one fucking house just to make it. And they barely doing that. Talk to these older black women how they have to come out of retirement and get back to work.
So, just as an highlight, Rome, you are also building. You're at the library right now, are you not?
Yeah. I just got done building. I had extended the fucking bathroom. I don't know if I can turn this damn camera. Nope, I can't turn it around. So I'm gonna show y'all the best way I can. I just built this. It's a extension to the bathroom. This was the second bathroom that's in the kitchen, but it was so small in here. Like if you would have came here, ain't no way you was fitting in this bathroom. I couldn't even fit in this fucking bathroom. Like the toilet was right next to the goddamn sink. And tell me why this nigga poured concrete around the damn toilet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on that. I just had did the floor. I know y'all seen what hold on. This floor was uneven. It was messed up. It was dropping. I just had fixed this. I can jump on it. That because let me go down here. Man, I feel so good about that because man, I was to get that motherfucking wall up, but we had to put some boards. Those are two different boards. I had to tie them to the concrete, and then we had the jacks. We had to jack it up, and once I let it down, it stayed in place. So I was happy. I was good. But I'm about to go back to Home Depot for a little bit more wood, and I need to go. I need to take my ass home. I'm tired, but I need to cover up this floor so Connie won't fall.
Okay. Just to answer this comment, says, what about building coalition? That's fine. But the thing is that you also have to be able to acknowledge the problem. The thing is like what the Black Panthers did when uniting with the Young Patriots is one of the prerequisites that the Black Panthers had when uniting with the Young Patriots is they had to get rid of the white supremacist symbols that they had, like the Confederate flag that they were flying. And so guess what? The Young Patriots actually acquiesced, got rid of that, and started to change their language so that they can be united more together with the Black Panthers. That's something that actually happened. And so guess what? Some of the Young Patriots actually ended up leaving the organization because they felt that they didn't want to do that. And some Black Panthers also ended up leaving. But they built the Rainbow Coalition because they took those bigoted symbols and ideas and tossed them out so that they can finally unite. And so that's the point. And so ultimately it has to come together with getting rid of these thoughts and ideas that think, oh, well, everything's good. We're in a post-racial society. That's the same thinking that people said when Barack Obama became president. Do we live in a post-racial society? No. And the thing is that ultimately use
I hope y'all not fighting for real.
In order to keep us down, to keep us separate. All right, so just to let you guys know, also we're raising money for our Orlando Mutual Aid here in Orlando. If you guys would like to, you guys can donate at $Orlando RBN. We're continuing to fundraise. We're doing this for primarily grocery gift cards and toiletries as well. So if you're able to contribute, thank you so very much. So before we go, any final words, Rome?
I just, I'm disappointed, but I don't expect too much from white man. But if you're gonna speak on, if you're gonna speak on something, man, you gotta come correct, man. Don't tell this lie to your audience that black people is better off. That's some racist shit when we can see. We can't even barely turn on the fucking news without seeing one of my black brothers and sisters being hurt, being killed by the same system that you said that we are better off in. That is just a slap in the face. It's a spit in your coffee. It's a stomp on your toe. It's whatever. It's bad. And you shouldn't speak on things that you like. I can't speak, like I said, I can't speak on being a part of the white community or how they are better off or worse off. I don't experience that. I don't live as a white man, but you have You have to do better, man. That's just wrong. We are way worse off. People that I knew for years, they had beautiful houses. They are homeless now. The drugs is still rampant in our neighborhoods. The crack is still here now. The pills are here, and it seems like nobody cares. And man, it's just so fucked up. And I go out and giving away clean water to Black communities across this country. Clean water in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023. We're still giving out clean water to Black communities. You can't say that we are better off. We are worse than where we were in the 90s. We are dying at a younger age. Not getting killed. We are dying at a younger age than our grandparents. So if you're going to speak on these things, please know what the fuck you are talking about, man, because this is disrespectful in the highest order.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Jalen Walker was shot 150 times for a traffic violation. If that's not racism, I don't know what is. Thank you very much for that. So with that, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Also, like I always say, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. And by the world, I mean the entire world, not just And look, reading is fundamental. Please try to unite in solidarity with people, even if it doesn't benefit you directly. Ultimately, it benefits humanity. And kindness and compassion will be what saves the day. And let's also start putting our egos to the side and actually start listening to people and seeing ourselves and other people, even if they're different than us. Take care, everybody. Love you all.
All right, y'all.
Have a beautiful day. Very sorry, but I also forgot to read what's going on Rockfin. My apologies. I just want to make sure I get to that. So just so that we are clear, thank you so very much. So I was sent a DM from Roger Meadows. Thank you so very much. So appreciate it very much. And I'll get to the rest of these. My apologies. So Roger Red Meadows, let me see. So Roger says universal policies and programs are great, but if we as a Black community, even more as American freemen community, do not have, along with these universal programs, ownership of our own institutions, rather than have to depend solely on the white-owned, white-ran institutions to serve our community, then we will still be at the bottom. We can't have TRICARE for all, but Black and American freemen community can still end up with hospitals and medical institutions in our community, although government ran, but not ran by those who work for the government who come from our community. You can't have a situation where whites in government get transferred to work at one of the government hospitals in our community and they're like, oh God, no, I don't want to work over there. They're coming to our community with that attitude, with no intention to be as responsive to our welfare as they would their own community. We're tending to the welfare of our community is not prioritized in a way that is seen as important as when they serve their own white community. However, I will say that to answer Rome's question regarding how do we get healthcare, as to challenge Jimmy, like I always in the chat to him, is never there to read. There's only way we're going to get it as politicians will never deliver. It will have to deliver at Jimmy's California. You're in Michigan, you're in Florida. Citizen ballot initiatives ran as amendments. Hospital, medical facilities, dialysis centers, clinics, and such out of the hands of shareholders and instead put it into the hands of the workers or the community, converting them into worker or community cooperatives. My point is, Jimmy said on Twitter that since no one else will lead, then he will. The moment he said that, I responded with the following tweet by saying, since he's a millionaire, he has a platform and he's popular. What I suggested was put all the three of those together and do the following. He said the best way to do that is by starting in your own state as a Californian and have the power to completely around the politicians to place your own initiatives on the ballot to be approved by voters to become a policy. I suggest you run citizen ballot initiatives as amendments, not law. This way, it makes it harder for your state or government to overturn it. You can start with running initiatives for things like following CalCare in California Public Bank. I will put the link to this tweet in the chat as well, just so that everybody has that. My apologies. There. Also, Roger continues, says Jimmy is looking at things from a national strategy approach, using the protests general to get politicians to do what you want, striking to break the boys to the table for collective bargaining. The problem with that is you will protest, you will still be dependent upon the politician to do what you want. If you have the power to do it yourself through a citizen ballot initiative process, you don't need to protest. You don't even need the politician in certain circumstances when it comes to passing laws and amendments. That is, when you strike, you're striking to get the boss to come to the table regarding the collective bargaining. But if you own the company as a worker, then striking is unnecessary. Says, don't get it twisted about W.E.B. Du Bois. He also believed that only a few of us from our community are meant to lead the rest of the Black community, most notably what he called the Talented 10, which was those from the most elite from our community. This has been lived out in real time through the NAACP, Urban League, NAN, etc., and has proven to be an abject failure. That contradicts socialism, which means workers having shared ownership over the economy, who we as Black socialists should be elevating as Philip Randolph. In case you don't know, this is who we more align with, not Du Bois or Booker T. Washington. Said Asa Philip Randolph was an American labor unionist and civil rights activist. In 1925, he organized and led the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and first successful African-American-led labor union in the early civil rights movement, the labor movement. Randolph was a prominent voice. His continuous agitation of the support of fellow labor rights activists against racist labor practices helped lead President FDR to issue Executive Order 8802 in 1941, banning discrimination on the defense industries during World War II. The group then successfully maintained pressure so that President Harry Truman proposed a new Civil Rights Act and issued Executive Orders 9980 and 9981 in 1948, promoting fair employment and anti-discrimination policies in federal government hiring and ended racial segregation in the armed services. So thank you for all of that. Roger as well. Appreciate it very much. Thank you very much for the tip, Car. This is about ending torture. So it's ad blocked, unfortunately for me, but thank you so very much for that. And then says this leaflet, Hempcar says this leaflet exposes USA proves waterboarding is a euphemism. Can't teach Nazis were bad without saying they put people in ovens. Spread on campus. Bobby Seale said right on when I sent him the petition. Muckraking puts the FBI on the defense. Brian Glick said the war at home is short and concise book about oppression of Panthers and the SDS. Roger Meadows says I have a good DM. Thank you so very much for that. So thank you very much to everybody as well. My apologies for missing that, but thank you very much for that. And take care, everybody, and have a wonderful day.